What if the night you saved a dying stranger was the night you stopped being human? You're not real. You called me Lila. And now the night remembers your name. A bond sealed in blood. A love that defies death. And a war between light and shadow that's only just begun. She bandaged the alpha vampire's wounds. The next night, shadows surrounded her home. Stay till the end, because mercy always has a price. Rain fell like shattered glass, tearing through the city's night. Neon lights bled into puddles, streaking crimson and gold across the cracked pavement. Lila Rowan pulled her coat tighter, her boots splashing through the water as she hurried home from the late shift at the cafe. She hated this hour, the time when the city felt hollow, as if everyone had retreated into safer corners. She should have crossed the street. She should have ignored the shape slumped in the alley beside the old cathedral. But something made her stop. A sound, soft, almost human. A groan. Her heart beat faster. Hello. The figure didn't move. Lila took a cautious step closer, peering through the rain. A man, or at least he looked like one, leaned against the wall, blood running down his side, dark against his soaked shirt. He was pale, unnaturally so, and for a moment she thought he was dead. Then his eyes opened. They were the color of fresh spilled wine. Lila froze.
No human eyes looked like that.
Her instinct screamed to run, to disappear into the storm. But instead, she found herself moving closer, kneeling beside him. "You're bleeding," she whispered. He laughed, or tried to. The sound came out broken raw. "You should go." Her trembling hands tore at the hem of her sweater, ripping it into strips. "If I go, you'll die." His hand shot up, grabbing her wrist. Cold, like touching marble that breathed. "Do you have any idea what I am?" Lila's throat tightened. She wanted to lie, to pretend ignorance. But the fangs glinting under his split lip gave her the truth before words did. "Vampire," she breathed. He flinched, as if the word itself burned. She should have run. Every story, every instinct told her to. But she didn't. Instead, she pressed the torn fabric against his wound. His blood was hot, thick, strangely metallic under the rain. "You're insane," he hissed. "Maybe," she said, forcing her shaking hands to work. "But I've seen too many people left to die in these streets." He stared at her, eyes narrowing with something between fury and disbelief. "You would save me," he said slowly. "After seeing what I am?" Lila met his gaze. "Someone has to." Silence stretched. Then, as thunder rolled above, he let go of her wrist. She tightened the makeshift bandage, ignoring his low growl of pain. His body leaned into her touch, despite himself. "Why?" he rasped. "Because you're alive," she said, and she wasn't sure if she was lying. The vampire, Kale, watched her with unreadable eyes. His voice was a low, dark whisper against the rain. "You don't know what you've just done." Lila sat back on her heels, breath ragged. "Then tell me." He bared his teeth in something that wasn't quite a smile. "You've marked yourself, little mortal. My blood is on your hands now. And the night remembers." Lightning split the sky. Lila blinked, and when her vision cleared, he was gone. Only the shredded remnants of her sweater remained, soaked in blood and rain. She told herself it had been a hallucination. Adrenaline, exhaustion, imagination. But the next night, when she locked her apartment door and double-checked the windows, the shadows didn't stay still. They moved. The air grew thick, humming like distant thunder. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out. Lila's breath hitched. "No," she whispered to the dark. "Not real." Then a voice, low and smooth as smoke, slid through the silence. Lila. Her name, spoken like a promise. Or a threat. She turned toward the sound, and saw eyes. Crimson, burning, in the dark. The apartment seemed to shrink around her, the air growing dense, electric. Lila's trembling fingers fumbled for the nearest light switch, but nothing happened. The power was gone. Only the faint pulse of streetlight from outside offered shape to the dark. Her breath came unevenly, each inhale loud enough to make her wince. "Who's there?" she whispered. The answer came not in words, but in movement. The shadows by the kitchen stretched, deepening into a shape, tall, lean, and unmistakably human. A presence, stepping forward with the grace of something that didn't belong to this world.
Cale.
The same man she'd found bleeding on the street, except now there was no blood, no weakness. His shirt was dark, dry. His eyes, though, those remained the same impossible red, glowing faintly as they fixed on her. "You shouldn't be here," Lila said, the words catching on her breath. She snatched the knife from the counter, gripping it so tight her knuckles went white. "Whatever you are, whatever this is, leave." Cale tilted his head slightly, his voice a low murmur. "You called me." She shook her head, stepping back until she hit the edge of the kitchen counter. "I didn't. When you touched me, when you tore your sweater to save me, you called to me. I heard it." And now, he took another step closer, his shadow folding over hers like a living thing. "The others have heard it too." Lila's pulse thundered. "Others?" Cale's jaw clenched. "The ones who hunt my kind. And yours." A sudden gust rattled the window. The curtains fluttered violently, though the glass remained closed. The lights outside flickered and died. When they came back, briefly, the street was empty, no cars, no pedestrians, just a heavy silence that pressed against the windows like a weight. "What do you want from me?" Lila whispered. His eyes softened, though the rest of him stayed unreadable.
"Answers," he said.
"You did something no mortal has done in centuries. You touched me and lived. The night doesn't forgive acts like that." "I didn't do anything." "You did," Cale said quietly, his voice cutting through her panic. "You saved a creature that wanted to die." The admission froze her. "You what?" His gaze flicked away for a heartbeat, his voice suddenly distant. "That night, I let them come. I was ready for the end. The hunt, the war, the centuries, it was enough. I wanted to bleed into the earth and vanish." His crimson eyes returned to hers, sharper now. "And then you appeared. Foolish mortal with shaking hands and a torn sweater. You should have walked away." "I don't regret it," she said before she could stop herself. Something flickered across his face, a fracture in the carefully maintained armor. "You should," he said softly, "because now they will not stop until they've torn you apart." Lila's stomach twisted. "Who are they?" "The Nightborn," Cale murmured. "My kind, but not. Those who surrendered their souls to the hunger. They can smell my blood on you." A cold dread spread through her. "Then get rid of it." "I can't," he said. "It's already done. The bond has formed." "Bond." Cale stepped closer, and though his voice was barely a whisper, it filled the room. "You are marked by my blood and my will. You exist within my shadow now. The Nightborn will come for you not because of who you are, but because of what you are, to me." Her grip on the knife faltered. "And what am I?" For the first time, something human slipped into his voice. Confusion, maybe even sorrow. "A tether," he said. "And a reminder of everything I tried to forget." The air shifted. The lights in the hall flickered wildly before bursting with a soft pop. From the corners of the room, darkness thickened, taking form, hands, faces, whispering voices pressing against the walls. Cale's eyes flashed crimson bright. He turned sharply toward the door. "They've found you." What do I do?" Lila gasped. "Stay behind me," he said, his tone changing to something lethal. The shadows crashed inward. Cold wind blasted through the room, as if the night itself had broken the door. Lila dropped to the floor, covering her head, her heart pounding like thunder. But Cale was no longer the pale, wounded man she'd saved. He moved like lightning, his hand slicing through the air. Power erupted from him, crimson light searing through the dark. The shadows screamed, hissing, retreating. Lila saw only fragments, Cale's silhouette framed in the burst of red light, the smoke curling away from his body, the way the darkness recoiled as if terrified of him. Then silence. Lila blinked through tears, her hands trembling as she tried to pull herself up. The room was a wreck, Broken glass, scorched walls, the scent of smoke and iron thick in the air. Kale stood at the center of it, chest heaving, eyes still glowing faintly. When he turned to her, she thought he might vanish again, but instead, he spoke, his voice low and certain. "You belong to my shadow now, Lila Rowan, whether you meant to or not." Her knees gave out, the knife clattering to the floor. And in that moment, she realized the most terrifying part wasn't that he had said it. It was that part of her already believed him. Morning didn't feel like morning. The storm had passed, but the city wore its aftermath like a bruise. Clouds clung to the skyline, bruised purple and gray, and the light that managed to slip through was cold and pale. Lila hadn't slept. She sat curled on the couch, knees to her chest, a blanket draped around her shoulders that did nothing to stop the trembling. The apartment smelled like burned ozone and rain. It should have been impossible, shadows coming alive, whispering, burning away in red light. A vampire standing in her kitchen. Yet the cracked doorframe and scorched wall were proof enough. She ran her fingers along her wrist absently, and that's when she felt it, something raised beneath the skin. Not a cut, not a bruise. It pulsed faintly under her touch, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. A mark. The memory of Kale's voice echoed in her head. "You are marked by my blood and my will." She stood abruptly, the blanket falling to the floor. "No," she whispered to herself, gripping her wrist until her nails dug into the skin. "This isn't real." But it was. The faint thrum of energy beneath her flesh said so. A sound broke the silence, 3 sharp knocks against the door. Lila froze. "Who is it?" Silence. Her pulse spiked. She crept closer, bare feet whispering across the floorboards, and peered through the peephole. Nothing. Just the empty hallway. Another knock, this time softer. And then a voice. "Lila." Her stomach dropped. The voice was low, smooth, unmistakable.
"Kale."
She yanked the door open before she could stop herself. "What the hell are you doing here?" Kale stood in the hall like the night had followed him inside. Dark coat, unearthly stillness, eyes dimmed from crimson to a muted wine red. He didn't look like a monster now. He looked impossibly human. Too human. "I told you," he said quietly. "They won't stop." "And I told you," she snapped, "to stay away from me." His gaze flicked over her, noting the dark circles under her eyes, the shaking in her hands. "You haven't slept. Because of you," she shot back. "Because you brought whatever this is into my life. I don't want it, Kale." He sighed, the sound soft but heavy. "You think I do? You think I wanted to be dragged back into this world because of one mortal who couldn't walk away from a dying stranger?" His words stung, sharp and cold. But beneath them was something raw, a truth she didn't yet understand. Lila's anger cracked. "Then why come back?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for her wrist, the one with the mark. She flinched, but his touch was careful, almost reverent. When his thumb brushed over the skin, heat flared under her flesh, bright and immediate. The mark glowed faintly, a swirl of crimson and gold light that faded as quickly as it appeared. Lila gasped, jerking her hand away. "What is that?" "Proof," he said softly. "The bond is real. It ties us together. The Nightborn will feel it, your pulse echoing mine. To them, you're a beacon." Her throat went dry. "You're saying they'll find me because of you? Because of us?" She took a step back, shaking her head.
"No."
"No, you're not dragging me into your war. You can fix this, you have to be able to." Kale's expression hardened. "There's no fixing it, Lila. Only surviving it." The words landed like ice. Something behind him shifted. The hallway light flickered once, then dimmed. Kale's head turned sharply, eyes narrowing. "They're close." Fear clawed its way up her spine. "Already." "They never stopped hunting," he said, his tone suddenly all command. "Get what you need. We leave now. I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice." The air crackled around them, thickening like smoke. Kale's gaze darted to the window where something moved outside, dark shapes gliding across the glass. Lila took a step toward the door, but Kale's hand shot out, gripping her arm. Do you trust me? She glared at him, breath shaking. No. Then survive with me, he said, his voice a low growl. And you'll have time to hate me later. Before she could argue, the lights shattered. The room plunged into shadow. Kale's arm wrapped around her waist, cold and unyielding, and the world tilted. There was no pain, just motion, fast and endless, as if the air itself had opened to swallow them. When it stopped, Lila stumbled, breathless, into a space that wasn't her apartment. The smell hit first: stone, fire, rain-soaked earth. Torches burned along towering walls. A mansion.
Old. Vast. Silent.
Kale released her, his hand lingering at her elbow. Welcome to the only place they can't reach you. Lila turned in a slow circle, heart still hammering. Where are we? Kale's voice was quiet, but something in it sent a chill down her spine. My home. The last refuge of the bloodbound. The mansion stretched into the storm like a fortress carved from shadow and stone. Every corner flickered with firelight, but the warmth didn't reach far. Darkness clung to the ceilings like smoke that refused to fade. Lila stood in the entryway, soaked, shivering, her pulse still hammering from whatever had just happened. One blink, and she'd gone from her small apartment to this gothic labyrinth. It didn't feel possible. Where are we? She asked again, her voice quieter this time. Kale's boots clicked against the marble as he walked ahead, the faint echo of his steps carrying through the hall.
A sanctuary, he said.
Hidden between the edges of the living and the dead. The last place they'd dare to enter. Lila stared at the carved archways, the paintings of pale figures watching from the walls, the crimson drapes that moved though no wind touched them. It was beautiful, terrifyingly so. You live here? I exist here, Kale corrected. Living is something I stopped doing a long time ago. She followed him, though every instinct screamed to turn back. The floor beneath her feet was cold, the air heavy with age. They stopped before a wide staircase, the banister carved into spiraling roses of black wood. A man appeared at the top of the stairs, tall, lean, and far too still. His eyes, a piercing gray, glimmered faintly in the dim light. His expression didn't change when he saw them, but his voice, when it came, was smooth as silk. My lord, he said, bowing slightly. You've returned. His gaze slid to Lila, assessing cold. And you've brought company. Kale didn't flinch. She stays. The gray-eyed man's lips curved faintly, though it wasn't quite a smile. A mortal. Interesting choice. Lila bristled. I'm right here, you know. Kale shot the man a warning look. Elias. Just the name was enough to silence him. Elias inclined his head, though the faintest spark of amusement lingered in his expression. As you command, my lord. Shall I prepare a room for your guest? Do it, Kale said. Lila's eyes widened. Wait, what? I'm not staying here. Kale's voice didn't rise, but it carried an authority that made the air vibrate. You will, or you'll die before sunrise. Her breath caught. You don't get to decide that. His gaze locked onto hers, steady, unreadable. You think you can walk out that door? He gestured toward the massive double doors behind her. Try. Something in his tone made her turn. She crossed the hall and reached for the handles, but the moment her fingers brushed the cold metal, a shock ran through her arm. The air around the door shimmered, rippling like disturbed water. She stumbled back, clutching her hand. What the hell was that? The ward, Elias said from the stairs, his voice calm. This place exists outside your world. The door doesn't open for mortals without his will. Lila stared at Kale, heart pounding. You kidnapped me. I saved you, he said evenly. Those things were seconds away from tearing through your apartment. You wouldn't have lasted the night. I didn't ask you to. No, Kale interrupted, voice suddenly sharp. You didn't ask to bind yourself to me either, but you did. And now every breath you take is a call to the Nightborn. They will keep coming. This, he gestured around the grand hall, is the only place where their hunger can't reach you. Lila sank onto the nearest step, her legs trembling. This is insane. Kale's tone softened slightly. So is surviving. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of fire in the massive hearth. Then Elias descended the stairs, his movements as graceful as smoke. The East Wing is prepared, he said quietly. Shall I escort her? Kale nodded once. No one enters her room without my permission. Elias's eyes gleamed. Of course. Lila wanted to argue, but exhaustion crushed her resistance. Her body ached from fear, her mind from confusion. She followed Elias down a long corridor lined with crimson carpets and flickering lamps. Her room was enormous, larger than her entire apartment, with a four-poster bed draped in velvet, a stone fireplace already burning low, and tall windows that overlooked the forest. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. Elias lingered at the door, watching her. Do not wander tonight, he said. The house shifts after dark. What does that mean? She asked, but he was already gone. Lila sank onto the bed, staring at the flames. She tried to make sense of it, the vampire, the bond, the mark glowing beneath her skin. But all she could see were his eyes. Crimson, sharp, impossible to forget. Outside, thunder rumbled again, though no rain fell. The fire dimmed slightly, and for a moment, she thought she saw movement in the window. A shape, tall and still, watching. She stood, heart thudding, and pulled the curtain aside. The balcony beyond was empty, except for a faint trace of mist curling along the railing. And then a voice, soft and near, made her freeze. You shouldn't stare into the dark, Lila. Sometimes it stares back. She spun around. Kale stood in the corner of her room, half hidden by shadow. Lila's breath hitched. You can't just appear in my room like that. Kale didn't move from the corner. The firelight traced the sharp lines of his face, his crimson eyes glowing faintly, not bright enough to burn, but enough to make her pulse stutter. This house is bound to me, he said simply. Every wall, every shadow. It listens when I move. That's not an excuse, she snapped, clutching the blanket around her. You can't just stand there watching me. He tilted his head slightly, as though the outburst was unexpected. I was making sure the ward held. The what? The barrier, Kale said, his tone softer now. It keeps them out. But it also adjusts when someone new enters. I had to be certain you weren't seen. Lila's voice faltered. You mean the Nightborn? His gaze darkened.
Yes.
They don't cross these walls easily, but they've done worse to find what they want. She shivered, hugging herself tighter. And what do they want? Kale was quiet for a long time before answering.
Me.
Always me. You are the key they can use to get to me.
Her throat went dry.
Then unmark me. Break the bond. He looked at her then, really looked, and the faintest flicker of something raw passed through his expression. If I could, I would. The words were so low she almost didn't hear them. Lila sank onto the edge of the bed, her anger ebbing into confusion. So I'm trapped here, in your haunted mansion, with you. Kale's lips twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. When you say it like that, it sounds more dangerous than it is.
Isn't it? She shot back.
He took a slow step closer. His presence filled the air like thunder, quiet but impossible to ignore. Only if you make it so. Lila swallowed hard. She wanted to look away, but his gaze pinned her in place, deep and unrelenting. Why me, Kale? Why did it have to be me in that alley? He hesitated, just enough for her to see that he didn't have an easy answer. Because the night doesn't choose by reason, he said finally. It chooses by consequence. That's not an answer. It's the only one that exists. Silence stretched between them, thick as fog. The fire crackled softly, casting golden light over his pale skin. He looked less like a monster now, and more like a man carrying centuries of weight. And that, somehow, was worse. Lila forced herself to speak. You said this place was safe. What is it, exactly? Kale's eyes flicked to the window, where the forest swayed in the distance. This is the house of ash and fire. It's where the bloodbound take refuge when the world turns against them. No human has ever stepped inside until you. Her stomach twisted. And the others? You mean vampires? Kale's jaw tightened.
Some.
Not all are loyal. Many have turned, become Nightborn. Those who remain true stay hidden. The world above forgot us long ago. The way he said it, forgot us, made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. Do you miss it? She asked quietly. The world.
He didn't answer right away.
Instead, he approached the fireplace, resting a hand against the mantel. Once I did, he said, voice distant. But longing for the sun is a cruelty to those who can never touch it again. Lila's breath caught. That's sad. He looked over his shoulder, the faintest trace of a smirk touching his lips. You think monsters deserve pity? No, she said softly. But I think even monsters remember what it felt like to be human. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The fire popped, throwing sparks that danced in the space between them. Then Kale turned fully, his expression unreadable again.
Rest.
You'll need your strength. For what? His eyes gleamed faintly. The bond is awakening. You'll feel it soon. What does that mean? You'll know when it happens. She didn't like the sound of that. But before she could argue, Kale's form shimmered, his outline blurring like smoke. And then he was gone, fading into the shadows as though the night itself had swallowed him. Lila stood frozen, her heart racing. She hated the silence he left behind. It pressed against her chest, heavy and expectant. She crawled into the bed, curling beneath the velvet blanket, eyes fixed on the flickering fire. She told herself she would sleep. Just for an hour. Just enough to forget. But sleep brought no peace. She dreamed of crimson eyes and whispers in the dark. Of a pulse that wasn't hers, beating beneath her skin. Of Kale's voice, close enough to feel against her ear. You belong to the night now, little mortal. Lila jolted awake, breath sharp, the fire long dead. The room was dark, save for the faint glow from the window. And beneath her skin, the mark pulsed. Harder this time, like something alive. The pulsing beneath her skin wouldn't stop. It throbbed in rhythm with her heartbeat, yet it wasn't hers. It was heavier, deeper, ancient. Every time it flared, warmth crawled up her arm, coiling through her veins until her breath came shallow and uneven. Lila threw back the covers, her skin damp with sweat. The room was cold, yet her body burned. What's happening to me? She whispered to no one. The mark on her wrist glowed faintly, lines of gold and crimson weaving together in a pattern that seemed to shift when she stared at it. She tried rubbing it away, even scraping her nails across it, but the light only pulsed brighter in response. Then, faintly, she heard it a voice. Not outside. Inside. A whisper threading through her pulse. Lila? She froze. Kale? No answer. Her heart hammered. She stumbled out of bed, grabbing the robe draped over the chair, and shoved her feet into the slippers she'd found at the bedside. The house was quiet, too quiet. Even the fire in the corridor torches burned low, flickering as though nervous. Lila followed the faint sound of wine down the hall. The mansion felt alive. Walls creaking, lights dimming when she passed, whispers echoing faintly in the dark. Every instinct told her to go back. But the pull inside her wrist tugged her forward, a magnetic thread leading her somewhere deeper. At the end of the corridor, a door stood slightly ajar, a dull red light leaking through the crack. The air smelled faintly of smoke and rain. She pushed it open. Kale stood in the center of a vast chamber, shirtless, his back to her. His skin gleamed pale under the crimson glow that filled the room. Lines, similar to the mark on her wrist, glowed faintly across his shoulders and down his spine, pulsing in rhythm with her own. He turned his head slightly, as if he'd sensed her before she'd made a sound. You shouldn't be here. Lila stepped inside despite the warning. What's happening to me? Kale's gaze swept over her, something dark flickering behind his eyes. You're feeling the bond. It's awakening. Her voice shook. It feels like fire under my skin. That's because our blood calls to each other. You feel my energy. I feel yours. The connection is complete now. Her pulse stumbled. You mean I'm what? Linked to you forever? Kale's lips parted, but he didn't speak. He turned away instead, moving toward the center of the room where a stone basin shimmered with liquid light. Not forever, he said at last, but for as long as one of us lives. The meaning struck her like a blade. So, I die, you lose your bond. You die, I will be dragged into the dark with me, he finished quietly. She staggered back. You have to be joking. I never joke, Kale said, his tone cutting like ice. Lila's vision blurred. The air seemed thinner here, harder to breathe. So, I'm your prisoner then. A leash you tied around my neck without asking. His jaw flexed. You tied it yourself when you touched me in the rain. That's not fair, she snapped. I was trying to save your life. And you did, Kale said softly, turning toward her again. His eyes glowed like embers, brighter now, burning through the dimness. You saved a creature that was never meant to be saved. And the night doesn't forgive mercy. Her throat tightened. Then why me? Why not kill me and end it? Kale took a step closer. The space between them trembled with tension, heat. Because, he said slowly, if I kill you, I die too. The words hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Lila's mind reeled. Then what happens now? He closed the distance until he was only a breath away, his voice a low murmur that thrummed in her bones. Now you learn what you've become. He raised a hand, his fingertips brushing her wrist where the mark still glowed. The touch sent a shock through her body, not pain, but an electric awareness that stole her breath. The mark flared in answer, gold light spilling up her arm, wrapping briefly around his fingers. Lila gasped. It's reacting to you. It's reacting to us, Kale corrected. His expression softened, though his eyes stayed fierce. When I move, you feel it. When you're in danger, I will know. Our lives are mirrors now, Lila. You can run from me, but the bond will drag you back. I won't accept that, she whispered, though her voice trembled. You don't have to, Kale said. It already exists. The glow slowly faded, leaving her wrist bare again, only the faintest shimmer of light beneath the skin. Lila yanked her arm away, clutching it to her chest. I hate this. I hate you for doing this to me. Kale's face remained impassive, but his voice dropped low. Hate me if you must. But understand this, if you leave this house, they will find you. They will tear the bond from you, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. And I will feel every second of it. She stared at him, horrified. You'd feel it, every scream. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, Kale turned away, his shoulders rigid. Go back to your room.
Sleep if you can.
I'll keep the watch tonight. Lila wanted to argue, to scream, to break something, but the fatigue hit her all at once, the bond thrumming low like a heartbeat buried under her ribs. She turned toward the door, her hand shaking as she reached for the handle. Kale, she said softly, without looking back. He didn't answer. Why did you want to die that night? The pause that followed was long enough. She almost thought he wouldn't reply. Then, quietly, because I had nothing left to live for. Lila's heart clenched. And now, when he finally looked at her, the light from the basin caught his eyes, making them blaze like a dying sun. Now I'm not so sure. The next morning bled gray through the mansion's high windows, though calling it morning felt wrong. The sun never fully reached this place. It only sent slivers of muted light that made everything seem more haunted. Lila sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the faint shimmer still lingering under her skin where the mark pulsed quietly. She hadn't dreamed this time. Or maybe she had, and her dreams had simply blended into her waking life. The bond pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat whispering through her bones. Kale's heartbeat. The thought made her chest tighten with something she didn't want to name. A soft knock at her door startled her. She rose warily and opened it to find Elias standing there, composed as ever in a dark coat that seemed to swallow the dim light. My lord asked me to see that you eat, he said smoothly, though his tone suggested he doubted she would. You look pale. I wonder why, Lila muttered. Elias's lips curved in something that might have been amusement. The bond takes a toll. Mortals were meant to share blood with our kind. You're lucky he stopped it where he did. Her stomach twisted. Stopped what? The connection, Elias replied. When a vampire binds to a mortal, the mortal's life becomes part of his. If he'd gone further, if he'd sealed it fully, you would no longer be human. Lila's voice dropped to a whisper. And he can still do that? Elias met her eyes. If you let him. Something in his tone, measured, deliberate, made her uneasy. Why do I get the feeling you want me to refuse? Elias's expression didn't change, but his gaze flicked toward the far end of the hall. Because I remember what happened the last time he cared for someone. The night she died, this house nearly burned to ash. Lila felt a chill crawl up her spine. He told me he had nothing left to live for. He meant it, Elias said quietly. Until you. She wanted to deny it, to claim it wasn't true, that she wasn't the reason Cale had broken his own vow of solitude. But the way Elias said it, calm, certain, left her shaken. Before she could respond, Cale appeared at the far end of the corridor, moving with that same eerie, controlled grace. His eyes flicked between them, unreadable. Elias. My lord. Elias inclined his head. She's awake. I can see that. Cale's voice was softer when it turned toward her. Walk with me. Lila hesitated, then followed as he led her down a hall lined with tall windows overlooking a courtyard choked with vines and broken statues. The light outside was pale and strange, like a sun filtered through mist and memory. You're adapting faster than I expected, Cale said after a while. I don't feel adapted, Lila muttered. I feel haunted. That's accurate. His tone was dry, but the faintest edge of amusement crept in. The bond connects our senses. Sometimes you'll see what I see, feel what I feel. Perfect, she said, voice sharp with sarcasm. I've always wanted front row seats to a centuries-old trauma. Cale stopped walking. It's not a joke, Lila. I wasn't laughing. He turned toward her, his expression unreadable, the faintest shadow of conflict in his eyes. Then listen carefully. The bond isn't just connection, it's memory. My past will bleed into your mind whether you want it or not. As if to punctuate his words, the air shifted. A flicker of color flashed in the corner of her vision, a woman's face, pale as snow, eyes full of sorrow. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving Lila gasping. What was that? She demanded. Cale's jaw tightened. Her name was Saris. The one Elias mentioned? He nodded once. She was like you.
Brave.
Foolish. Human. And what happened to her? She died because of me. Lila didn't speak. The silence stretched, heavy and aching. Cale looked away first. The Nightborn came for her, as they come for you. I wasn't fast enough. For the first time since she'd met him, Cale looked almost fragile, his gaze distant, his voice edged with regret that cut deeper than anger ever could. Lila stepped closer before she could think better of it. You can protect me this time. He turned sharply, crimson eyes burning. You shouldn't believe in me, Lila. You should fear me. It's safer. Then stop saving me, she said quietly. If you're so dangerous. He didn't move, didn't breathe. The silence between them thickened until it was almost unbearable. Finally, Cale exhaled, the sound slow, controlled. If I could, he murmured, I would. The bond pulsed again, sharp, warm, undeniable. Lila felt it hum through her skin like electricity, a living thread that tethered them together. Cale's eyes flicked to her wrist, where the mark glowed faintly again. You feel it too, she said, her voice low. I always feel it, he replied. Before she could ask more, the sound of glass shattering echoed through the hall. Both their heads snapped toward it. Cale's posture shifted instantly, shoulders tense, eyes narrowing. Stay behind me, he ordered. Not this again. But he was already moving, faster than she could follow. Lila hurried after him as he rounded the corner into a gallery lined with tall stained glass windows. One of them was broken, shards glittering on the floor. The cold air that blew in carried something else. Whispers, low and guttural. Kale's voice dropped to a growl. "They've breached the ward." Lila's pulse spiked. "I thought you said this place was safe." "It was," he said grimly, "until someone invited them in." Elias stepped from the shadows then, face unreadable, eyes silver bright. Kale's voice was a razor. "What did you do?" Elias smiled faintly. "Nothing you wouldn't have done once." The floor trembled beneath their feet. From the broken window, darkness began to pour in, thick, living, alive with hunger. Lila backed away as Kale drew himself to his full height, crimson light already burning in his eyes. The Nightborn had found them again. The glass exploded inward in a rain of color. Wind howled through the gallery, carrying the smell of ash and blood. Lila stumbled back, covering her face as Kale stepped in front of her, cloak flaring like wings of shadow. From the darkness, shapes crawled into the light, pale, skeletal figures with eyes like dying embers. The Nightborn. Their movements were wrong, too fluid, too fast. They didn't walk so much as glide, whispering in a language that scraped at the edges of sanity. Kale's voice cut through the storm. "Elias, move aside." Elias didn't flinch. "You protected her once before, and it destroyed everything. I won't watch you make that mistake again." "This isn't your choice," Kale snarled. Elias's silver eyes flashed. "You bound yourself to her. You've made her a beacon. They'll keep coming until one of you dies." Lila's breath hitched. "Stop," she cried, but neither of them listened. Kale's power surged, crimson light bleeding through the cracks in the floor. "You would betray me?" "I would save you," Elias said softly. Then his voice hardened. "Even if it means ending her." Lila barely had time to react before Kale lunged. The air itself seemed to tear open as the two vampires collided, their power shaking the walls. Light and shadow crashed together, throwing sparks that scorched the stone. The Nightborn shrieked at the chaos, swarming forward in a frenzy. One of them lunged at Lila, its fingers like claws, its mouth filled with jagged teeth. She screamed and fell backward, scrambling for anything, a weapon, a door, anything. Kale's roar shattered the air. "Don't touch her." He moved faster than sight, intercepting the creature mid-lunge and tearing it apart with a single strike. Blood hissed against the floor, evaporating into mist. Lila stared, chest heaving, as he turned toward her. His face was spattered with black blood, his eyes bright with fury. "Run," he growled. "I'm not leaving you. Do it." But before she could move, Elias was there, faster than a whisper, his hand closing around her wrist. The bond flared instantly, pain and heat flooding through her arm. Kale doubled over with a strangled hiss, clutching his chest. "Stop," she screamed. "You're hurting him." "That's the point," Elias hissed. "You don't belong to this world. He's bound you to something you can't survive." He raised his other hand, shadows coiling around his fingers. Lila's mark pulsed violently, as if trying to repel the magic, and Kale's roar filled the chamber again. "Let her go." Elias's expression was twisted with grief. "You should have stayed dead, Kale." He struck. Lila felt the force before she saw it, a blast of black energy that ripped through the air toward Kale. She didn't think, she moved. The bond pulled her forward, faster than thought, faster than fear. She threw herself between them just as the spell hit.
Pain.
White-hot, endless pain. It tore through her chest, stealing her breath, her scream, her strength. She fell to her knees, gasping. The room blurred into color and sound. Kale's arms were around her in an instant. "No, no, 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 Lila," his voice cracked, raw, desperate. His hand pressed against her wound, but the magic burned through his skin too. The smell of smoke filled the air. Elias staggered back, horror flashing in his eyes. "I didn't." "You fool," Kale snarled. His voice wasn't human anymore. It was ancient, the sound of thunder breaking bone. You've doomed us both. He bared his fangs, power erupting from him in a storm of crimson light. The Nightborn shrieked, disintegrating where they stood. The walls split, the chandeliers crashed to the ground, and the house itself seemed to scream. Elias stumbled back as Kale rose to his full height, holding Lila against his chest. You can't stop it, Elias gasped. The bond, it's consuming you. Kale's eyes blazed like a dying sun. Then let it. He vanished in a blur of light and wind, leaving Elias alone among the wreckage. The Nightborn were gone, but their whispers lingered, crawling along the walls like the memory of a nightmare. Outside, the sky bled red as dawn approached. In the forest beyond the collapsing mansion, Kale knelt, Lila cradled in his arms. Her eyes fluttered open weakly, breath shallow. You're safe, he whispered, even as his own skin smoked in the growing light. Do you hear me, Lila? You're safe. She tried to smile, her fingers trembling as they brushed his jaw. You're burning. It's nothing. Her voice was faint. You'll die. Kale's throat worked, his crimson gaze locked on hers. Then I die with purpose. She tried to speak, but her breath faltered. The glow of her mark dimmed, flickering like a candle in the wind. Kale's power surged again, wild and unrestrained, wrapping around her like a shield. Stay with me, he begged. Please stay. Her eyes fluttered closed. Kale's roar shook the forest. The dawn broke fully, spilling gold across the trees, and for the first time in centuries, the alpha vampire wept. The forest lay still in the aftermath of chaos. Smoke rose from the ruins of the mansion, curling into the pale morning sky like ghostly fingers. The world was quiet again, too quiet, the kind of silence that feels like grief made sound. Kale sat beneath the gnarled remains of an oak, his arms wrapped around Lila's limp body. Her skin was cold, but not lifeless, not yet. He could still hear the faint echo of her heartbeat through the bond, a distant drum struggling to keep rhythm. You're not leaving me, he whispered, his voice raw, hoarse. His blood, dark and shimmering, stained her wound, his attempt to heal her the only thing keeping her tethered to this world. But it wasn't enough. The wound Elias had dealt wasn't mortal, it was something older. A curse meant to break bonds like theirs. Kale pressed his forehead to hers. You can't die. Not like this. Not because of him. But she didn't stir. Her lips were pale, parted slightly as though she'd been about to speak, when the light left her eyes. The bond between them pulsed faintly, like a dying ember refusing to fade. Kale's claws dug into the earth. His instincts screamed for blood, for vengeance, for something to make the agony stop. But vengeance wouldn't save her. The bond wasn't just fading, it was unraveling. He could feel it pulling at the edges of his soul, threatening to take him with it. He tilted his head back, staring at the crimson-tinted dawn breaking over the treetops. The light burned his skin, but he didn't move. If the night won't save her, he murmured, then I'll defy it myself. He shifted his grip, lowering her gently onto the ground, then bit into his own wrist. The blood flowed freely, ancient, powerful, alive with centuries of darkness. He pressed it to her lips. Drink, he whispered. Nothing. Please. His voice broke. Take it. Take what's left of me. Still nothing. Her chest rose once, weakly, then fell again. The bond dimmed to a flicker. Kale's vision blurred. The world tilted, his power slipping like sand through open hands. He'd sworn never to do this again, to never curse another soul with his blood. But she had already saved him once. Now it was his turn. He leaned forward, pressing his mouth to hers. His blood, dark and sweet, passed between them. The ritual older than memory, older than the cities buried beneath the soil. For a moment, the world went still. The forest, the wind, even the light itself seemed to hold its breath. Then she gasped. Kale pulled back, eyes wide. Lila's body arched violently as the blood took hold. Her mark ignited, flaring crimson and gold, lines of fire racing across her skin. She screamed, the sound ripping through the stillness like thunder. Kale held her, whispering her name over and over until the light finally dimmed. When it was over, she lay trembling in his arms. Her breathing steadied, slow but sure. Her eyes fluttered open, but they weren't the same. Where once had been warmth and humanity, now shimmered a faint glow, caught between gold and red. The bond pulsed again, stronger this time, filling the air between them with energy so potent it made the earth tremble. Lila stared up at him, confusion and terror flickering across her face. "What did you do?" Kale swallowed hard. "I brought you back." Her gaze darted around the clearing, taking in the ruin, the smoking horizon, the blood smeared across his face. "Brought me back." Her voice shook. "From what?" He hesitated. "From the edge. From death." Lila's hand lifted to her chest, fingers tracing the place where the wound had been. Smooth skin met her touch. No pain. No scar. Just a faint warmth, as if a heartbeat had been stitched beneath the surface. Your blood." Kale nodded once. "You're tied to me now. Not just by the bond. By essence." She blinked, the truth dawning slowly, horribly. "You turned me." "No," he said quickly, almost pleading. "Not fully. You're something in between." Lila's voice rose. "In between what?" "Life and death," he said. "Light and shadow. Mortal and eternal."
His gaze softened.
"You shouldn't exist, but you do." Her hands trembled. "You had no right." Kale flinched, his jaw tightening. "You were dying." "Then you should have let me die," she shouted, the words like a blade to both of them. The silence that followed was unbearable. Kale looked away, the weight of her anger cutting deeper than sunlight ever could. "I couldn't," he said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "You think I wanted this? To damn you to my world? You think I wanted to drag you into a curse that never ends?" His voice cracked. "I did it because I couldn't lose you. Not again." Lila's eyes burned with tears that wouldn't fall. "I didn't ask to be saved." "No," Kale said. "But you did save me." Her heart twisted painfully, and though she wanted to hold on to her rage, it slipped through her fingers like smoke. The bond pulsed again, steady, alive, and for the first time she realized what it meant. She could feel him now entirely. Every beat of his heart, every shadow in his mind. And beneath it all, a grief so deep it felt bottomless. Lila turned her head, staring at the ruined horizon. The sky had gone strangely dark again, not night, not dawn, something in between. "They'll come again," she murmured. Kale's gaze followed hers. "They already are." Far in the distance, through the haze, shadows gathered, a tide rising from the forest. Lila's fingers tightened around his hand. "Then we finish this." Kale's lips curved in a grim smile. Together. The horizon burned. It wasn't sunlight that painted the sky red this time, but fire, distant, spreading, devouring the treeline. The Nightborn were coming. They weren't hiding anymore. They wanted Kale and Lila both, wanted the bond that defied the laws of death and blood. The forest around them trembled as the air filled with that guttural whispering again, 1,000 voices layered over each other, chanting her name. Lila. Her pulse matched their rhythm. But this time, she didn't cower. She rose from the ground, the earth steaming beneath her bare feet, Kale's cloak sliding from her shoulders like shed skin. The bond thrummed inside her, alive and blazing, no longer something that tethered, but something that empowered. She could feel the hum of the world, the echo of his strength inside her. When she looked at Kale, he was already watching her, and for the first time, he didn't look like a creature of the night. He looked like a man standing beside his equal. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. He nodded. "The bond's complete. They can sense it. They think they can take it." Her voice steadied. "They're wrong." Kale's lips twitched into something between admiration and sorrow. "If you stand beside me now, there's no going back. The moment we fight together, you'll be bound to this world forever." She met his gaze without flinching. Then forever it is. A faint smile ghosted across his lips. You sound like me centuries ago. Lila turned toward the forest as the first figures broke through the smoke. Dozens, then hundreds of Nightborn, crawling and slithering and gliding through the trees, eyes burning gold and white. The sight might have broken her before, but now she felt no fear. Kale stepped forward, his voice carrying like thunder. You come to take what isn't yours, he called, his tone almost regal. You come for blood that defied your darkness. Then come and see what that defiance has made. The first wave lunged. Kale moved, and Lila moved with him, instinctively, perfectly. The bond guided her, her body reacting before thought could form. When he struck, she followed. When he turned, she flowed beside him. Their power wasn't separate anymore. It was one. The clearing became a storm of light and shadow. Kale's strikes painted the air with red arcs of power, each movement precise and merciless. Lila's touch followed, her fingertips leaving trails of gold that burned through the Nightborn like sunlight made flesh. One creature lunged for her from the side. Lila spun, her hand catching its throat, and light flared from her palm. The Nightborn screamed, disintegrating in an instant. Kale froze mid-motion, staring. You wield the light. Lila blinked, the glow fading slightly from her fingers. Your blood did this? No, Kale said, awe softening his voice. You did. The next wave hit harder, shadows coiling together into monstrous shapes. The air grew heavy, thick with smoke and ancient power. The largest of them stepped forward, towering above the rest, a figure of obsidian skin and molten eyes. Its voice was a rasp that scraped across the air. Kale, it hissed. You defy the night again. Kale's grip tightened on his blade. And I will until it forgets my name. The creature laughed, a sound that made the trees shiver. Your defiance cost you everything once. Shall I take it again? Lila stepped forward before Kale could answer. You'll take nothing. The being tilted its head, studying her.
Ah.
The mortal turned curse. You shouldn't exist. His weakness made you. Lila's hands glowed brighter. Then let his weakness end you. The creature lunged. Kale met it halfway, the ground shattering beneath their collision. Lila felt the force through the bond, felt Kale's power surge, his pain, his fury, and she lent him her strength. Light flared around them, golden and red intertwining, spreading like wings across the clearing. When the creature's claws raked across Kale's chest, Lila screamed, not from fear, but from instinct. The air around her erupted in a wave of radiance, searing through the enemy lines. Kale staggered, but didn't fall. He reached for her, their hands locking. The bond pulsed once, twice, then exploded outward. The Nightborn shrieked as the world filled with light. Every shadow was dragged screaming into it, dissolved by the combined force of their souls. When the glow faded, the forest was still. Smoke drifted upward, faint and harmless. The air smelled of rain again. Kale collapsed to one knee, blood running down his arm. Lila dropped beside him, catching his shoulders. You're hurt. He shook his head, breath ragged but steady. It's nothing. Don't, she said, her voice breaking. Don't lie to me. Kale looked up at her, and for the first time, his eyes weren't burning crimson. They were soft, human. You saved me. Again. Lila's chest tightened. I think we saved each other. He smiled faintly, weary but real. Then maybe that's enough. Silence fell, deep and sacred. The forest that had been filled with whispers was now still. The dawn finally broke through the clouds, spilling gold across the ruined land. The light touched Kale's skin, and this time, it didn't burn him. Lila's breath caught. The sun. Kale turned his face toward it, eyes closing. It seems your light changed more than you realized. She let out a soft laugh that cracked into a sob. You mean I made you daylight-proof? He opened one eye, a hint of mischief breaking through the exhaustion. You make it sound unromantic. They sat there as the world healed around them, the bond between them humming steady and whole. For the first time since the rain-soaked night they met, neither felt hunted. Neither felt alone. When Cale finally stood, he reached down a hand. "The world will come for us again," he said. "The night doesn't forgive rebellion." Lila took his hand, rising beside him. "Then let it come. We've already survived each other." He smiled at that, faint but full of something almost human. "You realize, little light, there's no turning back now." "There never was," she said. And as they walked together through the glowing wreckage of what once was his sanctuary, the shadows parted for them. Not in fear, but in reverence, because the night itself knew its king had found his equal, and together they had rewritten its rules. The ruins of the House of Ash and Fire were quiet now. The walls that had once hummed with dark power had crumbled into ivy and silence. Time, it seemed, had finally caught up to the immortal. Lila stood where the great doors used to be, her cloak brushing the stone floor. Sunlight streamed through the cracks in the ceiling, catching the motes of dust that drifted like gold. The light didn't burn her anymore. It warmed her. She still wasn't sure what she was, mortal, vampire, something in between, but she had stopped trying to name it. Whatever she had become, she was alive. She was hers. Behind her, footsteps echoed softly. She didn't have to turn to know who it was. "You come here every dawn," Cale said, his voice quieter now, gentler than it had ever been in life or death. "It's peaceful here," she murmured. "Even after everything." Cale moved beside her. His crimson eyes softened to a deep amber by the morning light. His hand brushed hers. The bond pulsed faintly, familiar now, no longer a chain but a heartbeat they shared. "The Nightborn are gone," he said. "For now." Lila smiled faintly.
"For now."
"That's your way of saying the world will find new monsters soon enough." He smiled too, though the sadness never left his eyes. It always does. They stood in silence for a long moment, listening to the wind. Where the mansion had fallen, green had begun to grow, tiny shoots of grass and pale flowers pushing through the blackened soil. The earth was healing. Slowly. "Do you ever regret it?" Lila asked at last. Cale turned toward her. "Binding you? Saving me," she said softly. "Cursing me. Loving me. All of it." His gaze lingered on her face, then drifted to the horizon where the sun was rising over the trees. "Every day," he said. Then he looked back at her, his voice lower, steadier. "And never once." Lila's throat tightened. She reached up, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "You could have stayed in the shadows. You could have let the night win." Cale's lips curved faintly. "And miss this?" They stood close enough for their reflections to merge in the shards of a shattered mirror at their feet, light and dark intertwined, impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The bond pulsed again, but now it felt like a heartbeat of the earth itself, ancient, steady, eternal. Cale turned his face toward the rising sun. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Lila frowned. "Hear what?" "The world," he said. "It's breathing again." She listened. The wind through the trees. The distant call of ravens. The hush of water somewhere nearby. Life. Lila smiled. "Then let it breathe." They stayed until the sun was fully risen. Then, hand in hand, they walked down the stone steps that led into the forest, leaving the ashes behind. The shadows watched them go, but none dared follow. Because somewhere in the dark, the night still whispered their names. Not as a curse anymore, but as a warning. The King of Shadows walks with his light. And together, they disappeared into the dawn. And that's the end of the story. A story of mercy that became destiny. Of darkness that learned the meaning of light. Of two souls bound by choice, not curse. If this tale left your heart racing, or aching, you're one of us now. Subscribe for more stories like this. Worlds of dark romance, immortal love, and the monsters who learn to feel. Every day, a new tale to haunt your nights, and maybe heal a little piece of your heart.